Philosophy is about finding answers to serious questions about ourselves and about the world we live in. Socrates said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." Socrates believed that man is composed of body and soul. This means that every human is dualistic. The body is imperfect and impermanent, while the soul is perfect and permanent. Plato said the soul is immortal. Plato added that there are three components of the soul: the rational soul, forged by intellect and reason; the spirited soul, in charge of emotion; and the appetitive soul was on man's desire. According to Plato, there are three parts of soul. First is the rational soul. It is the reason and intellect, the divine essence that enables us to think deeply, make wise choices, and achieve a true understanding of eternal truths. Second part is the spirited soul. It is the emotion and passion, the basic emotions such as love, anger, ambition, empathy, and aggressiveness. And lastly, the appetitive soul. It is the basic needs. It includes our basic biological needs such as hunger, thirst, and sexual desire. Saint Augustine believed that man is bifurcated nature, the body that dies on the earth, and the soul that yearns in the communion with God. He integrated the ideas of Plato and Christianity. Augustine's view of the human person reflects the inner spirit of the medieval world. The soul is united with the body so that man may be entire and complete. He believed that humankind is created in the image and likeness of God. Saint Thomas Aquinas believed that man is composed of matter and form. The soul animates the body. It is what makes us human. He believed that man is composed of matter and form. Matter refers to the common stuff that makes up everything in the universe. Man's body is a part of this matter. Form refers to the essence of substance on things. René Descartes is the father of the modern philosophy. In his view, the body is nothing else but a machine attached to the mind. Descartes' two distinct entities: cogito, the thing that thinks, which is the mind; extensa, or the extension, which is the body. David Hume believed that the self is just a bundle of impressions. Impressions are the basic object of experience or sensation. David Hume said that the idea of personal identity is a result of imagination, that there is no self. Immanuel Kant. To Kant, there is necessarily a mind that organizes that men get from the external world. To Kant, self is not just what gives us one personality but also the set of knowledge, acquisition for all human persons. The self constructs its own reality, creating a world that is familiar and predictable. Gilbert Ryle. To To him, what truly matters is the behavior that a person manifests in his day-to-day life. According to him, self is not an entity one can locate and analyze, but simply the combined name that people use to refer to all the behaviors that people make. He said that the self is the way people behave. Maurice Merleau-Ponty believed that mind and body are so intertwined that they cannot separate with each other. The mind-body bifurcation that has been going on for a long time is a futile endeavor and invalid problem. All knowledge of ourselves and our world is based on subjective experience.
The self, society, and culture. What is self?
Self is defined as the total being of a person, awareness of the individual or qualities of the individual.
From the contemporary literature and even common sense, self is defined by the following characteristics: separate, self-contained, independent, consistent, unitary, and private. By separate, the self is distinct from other selves. The self is always unique. Second, self is self-contained and independent because in itself it can exist. It is consistent because it is a personality that is enduring and thus can be expected to perish for quite some time. Self is also unitary since it is the center of all experiences and thoughts that run through the certain person. Finally, self is private. Each person sorts out of information, feeling and emotion, and thoughts processes. Within the self, this whole process is never accessible to anyone but itself. The last characteristics of the self being private suggests that the self is isolated from external world. However, there is also potential clash between the self and external culture. According to Marcel Mauss, every self has two faces, person and moi. Moi refers to a person, sense who he is. His body and his basic identity. Person is composed of the social concept of what it means to be who he is. Person has much to do with what it means to live in particular institution, particular religion, particular nationality, and how to behave given expectation and influences from others. Language is another interesting aspect of this social constructivism. The Filipino language is incredibly interesting to talk. Our language is gender neutral. In phrase, mahal kita does not distinct between lover and meeting Vygotsky. For them, the way that human persons develop is with the use of language, acquisition, and interaction with others. The way that we process the information is normally a form of internal dialogue in our head. Both Vygotsky and Med treat human mind as something that is made, constituted through language, as experienced in the external world, and as encountered in dialogue with others and families. While every child is born with certain giveness, disposition coming from his parents' genes and general condition of life, the impact of one's family is still deemed as a given in understanding the self. The kind family that we are born in, the resources available to us, and kind of development that we will have certainly affect of against go through life. Without a family, biologically and sociologically, a person may not even survive or become a human person, just like a building or steam. Gender and the self. Gender is another important aspect of the self. Gender is one of those rules of the self that is subject to alteration, change, and development. Our gender partly determines how we see ourselves in the world. The gender self is been shaped within a particular context of time and space. The sense of self that is being taught makes sure that an individual fits in a particular environment. This is dangerous and detrimental in the goal of finding one's self. Self-determination and growth of self, gender has the personality discovered and asserted and not dictated by culture and society.
Is self-considered as cognitive construct. The self-concept is a schema that contains knowledge about us. It's primarily made up of physical characteristics, group membership, and traits. Because the self-concept so complex, it has extraordinary influence on our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And we can remember information is related as well. Concept of self-schema. Carl Roger captured the idea in his concept of self-schema, or our organized system or collection of knowledge about who we are. I may also include your interest, work, course, age, name, and physical characteristics, among others. As you grow and adapt to the changes around you, they also change, but they are not passive receivers. They actively shape and affect how you see, think, and feel. Theory of symbolic interactionism. Under this theory, the self is created and developed through human interaction. Basically, there are three reasons why self and identity are social products. We cannot create ourselves out of nothing. Society helps in creating the foundation of who we are, and even if we make our choices, we will still operate in our social and historical context in one way or the other. Whether we like to admit it or not, we actually need others to affirm and enforce who we think we are. We also need them as reference point about our identity. What we think is important to us, we also have been influenced by what is important in our social and stereotypes of the self. Private self, your internal standards and private thoughts and feelings. Public self, your public image commonly geared toward having a good presentation of yourself to others. Social comparison. Theory of social comparison, humans gain information about themselves and source self-esteem by comparison to others. Upward social comparison. Individuals compare themselves to others who are socially better to view self more positively. Downward social comparison. A defensive tendency of evaluate oneself in comparison with others who troubles are more serious than one's. Comparison also entails what is called self-evaluation maintenance theory, which states that we can feel threatened when someone outperforms us, especially when that person is close to us. In this case, we usually react in the three ways. First, we distance ourselves from that person or redefine our relations with them. Second, we may reconsider that importance of the aspect or skills in which you were outperformed. Third, we also strengthen ourselves to improve that certain aspect of ourselves. However, in the attempt to increasing the maintain self-esteem, some people become narcissistic. Sometimes there is a thin line between high self-esteem and narcissistic. People with high self-esteem are commonly described as outgoing, adventurous, adaptable, and a lot of situations.
Western. Different cultures and environment tend to create different perceptions of the self, and one of the most common distinctions between cultures and people is the Eastern versus Western dichotomy, wherein Eastern represents Asia and Western represents Europe and Northern America. Confucianism can be seen as a code of ethical conduct, how one should properly and according to their relationships with other people, those it also focuses on having a harmonious social life. Who 1995, therefore, the identity and self-concept of an individual are interwoven with the identity and status of his/her community or culture, sharing its pride as well as its failure. Self-cultivation is seen as the ultimate purpose of life, but the characteristic of Chun Tzu, a man of virtue or noble character, is still embedded in his social relationship. Who 1995, the cultivated self in Confucianism is what some scholars call a subdued self, wherein a personal needs are represented subdued for the good of many, making Confucianism society also hierarchical for the purpose of maintaining order and balance of society. Who 1995. Confucianism is an ancient Chinese belief system which focuses on the importance of personal ethics and morality. Whether it is only or a philosophy or also a religion is debated into or maintained who lived from 370 to 289 BCE. The best about equality as well as complementarity ang human as well. Others being 1996. Taoism, also known as Taoism, is a Chinese philosophy attributed to Lao Tzu, 500 BCE, which contributed to the fourth religion of the people primarily in the rural areas of China and became the official religion of the country other than Tang Dynasty. Taoism is therefore both a philosophy and a religion. Emphasizes doing what is natural and going with the flow and according to the Tao or the cosmic force which flows through all things and binds and releases them. In Buddhism, the self is sent as a lesson birth out of the world line towards the world things, where humans intermediate that the self is also the source of all grief, suffering, human identity. Thus, it is our quest to forget about the self, forget the trappings of the self, break an attachment we have with the world, and to renounce the self which is the cause of all suffering, and in doing so, attain the state of nirvana. Who 1995. Buddhism is a faith that was founded by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, for the 2,500 years ago in India. With about 407 million followers, scholars consider Buddhism of the major world religion. Its practice has historically been most prominent in East and Southeast Asia, but its influence is growing in the West. Many Buddhism ideas and philosophers are overlapped with those of. As previously discussed, Western perspective does not discount the role of environment and society in the formation of the self, but the focus is always looking forward the self. You compare yourself in order to be better. Western. One can also describe that Western thought looks at the world in dualities, wherein you are distinct from the person, the creator, and separate from the object he created, in which the self is distinguish and acknowledgement. Walter 2012. Several studies show that Americans, for example, talk more about their personal attributes when describing themselves. The Western culture is what we could call an individualistic culture, since their focus is on the person. Asian culture, on the other hand, is called collectivism. Cultural, the group and social relations that is given more importance than individual needs and wants. By valuing an individual, Westerners more importance than individual needs and wants by their group competition in the name of the game, and they are more likely forward and forceful in their communication as well as decision making. Westerners and also emphasizes more than on value of quality, even if they see that the individual can rise about everything, also because everyone is on their own in competition. One can say that they also promote ideals that create fair competition and protect the individual issues with their collectivistic culture, put more emphasis of hierarchy as at the culture wants to keep things in harmony and order. Quincy, 2003.
The physical self and sexual self.
The physical self and sexual self. It has been believed that the 6 chromosomes define the sex and their secondary sexual characteristics, with the primary reproductive structures are formed, development of the accessory structures, and external genitalia begin. The formation of the male or female structures depend on the presence of the testosterone. Testosterone is the primary sex hormone of anabolic steroid in males. Once formed of the embryonic testes, release testosterone and the formation of the duct system and external genitalia follows. Disease associated with the reproductive system include STD or sexual transmitted disease, or infections transmitted from an infected person to an infected person through sexual contacts. STD also can cause bacteria, viruses, or parasites. And the second one is Escherichia coli. It's one of the most frequent causes of many common bacterial infections. And the last one is neoplasm. It's an abnormal growth of cells and also known as tumor. Erogenous zone is a part of the body that is primarily receptive and increase sexual arousal when touched in a sexual manner. Human sexual behavior is an ability to induce sexual arousal. It has 2 types. First, solitary, and the second one is sociosexual behavior. Solitary, it is the self-gratification means self-stimulation that leads to sexual arousal and generates sexual climax. Usually most self-gratification takes in private as an end in itself, but can also be done in socio-sexual relationship. In a socio-sexual behavior, it is the heterosexual behavior. It is the greatest amount of socio-sexual behaviors that occurs between only one male and one female. The hypothalamus and the limbic system are part of the brain believed to be responsible for regulating the sexual response. But there is no special sex center that was located in the brain, the human brain. Sexual problems may be classified as sociological, psychological, and social in origin. And the last part of the physical self and sexual self is STDs or sexually transmitted disease include chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, gonorrhea, HPV, and HVS, and Trichomonas vaginalis.
Lesson 2. To buy or not to buy? That is the question. So in our previous lesson, that's chapter 2, lesson 1. It's about understanding the self in the sexual aspect. So in understanding the self, we are going to know further about the material self.
Now, we tackle about material self. Material self, according to James Primary, is all about value. Clothes and immediate family and we are deeply affected to these things because we have but much investment of ourselves in them.
Russell Belt aside that we regard our positions as part ourselves. We are what we have and what passes the identifications of self and things, started in our infancy stage with make and distinctions among self and environment, and the others who desire our positions.
So that's what. Now let's continue. We are what we have. So now let's define or let's explain further the aspect of material self according to Russell Belt. Russell Belt posits that we regard our possessions as part of ourselves. We are what we have and what we possess. Actually, in other people, in our society today, that's what other people think. Okay, so like for example, if someone owns a MacBook Pro, that person that person will think of himself or herself as something that is very luxurious. So other people will see that person as well as, oh, that person owns a MacBook Pro, and MacBook Pro is one of the most expensive Apple gadgets in the market right now. So that person will be seen as something like very luxurious, or has a very other people would say that a gadget. So in here Russell Belt says that we regard our possessions as part of ourselves. So if you have if you have a collection of Apple products, so you tend to identify yourselves as one of the people who owns a lot of Apple products, and how they live will be your lifestyle as well. So we regard ourselves, our possessions are now identify us. Okay? Alright, so what other aspects? Like for example, if you live in a very big house, so even though that you can't maintain it anymore, your identity is part of it already. Okay, because for other people, your identity is already part of it. Because you live in a big house and others are not, so they will look at you as something that is rich and they are poor, that you are something that's on top of the pyramid and they are not. Okay, so that's what Russell Belt is trying to say. Okay, further, as we grow older, putting importance to material possession decreases. So that's one of the good things in possessions. I mean, in owning something. Okay, so other people. Okay, so when you were young. Okay, so let's go first. When you were young. When you were young, especially just like me, I tend to collect stuff that I think would make me look good of myself. Like for example, I am very into dresses, floral dresses. Okay, so when I was in college, I really liked to wear dresses. But when I graduated and started working, I shifted my clothes into something that is more simpler. That's because I realized that being simple makes
more comfortable. Okay, so in here, what I'm trying to say is that when you started to grow older, the things, your possessions or the things that you own will be, the degree of its importance will become lower. Okay, that's why other people keeps on saying, money can't buy happiness. Sometimes you have a lot of money, but it's for other people it must be important. But for you, since you already have a lot of money, its importance decreases because now you realize that having a big family, a very good people around you is more important. So the importance of materials tends to decrease in time. So that's what Russell Belk is trying to say. Material possession gains higher value in our lifetime if we use material possessions to find happiness. Associate these things with significant events, accomplishments, and people in our lives. However, like what I've said, as you grow older, right? As you grow older, your putting importance on material stuff decreases. However, in some people who puts their identity to material stuff or material stuff tends to give it a more priority compared to others. So for others, like what I've said in here, if you possess a lot of things and your importance of putting a lot of your values on putting a lot of investments on owning things, your material self, you will find happiness. You will aim to find happiness on owning it. Okay, all right. So those are people who puts their happiness on material things. Yes, it is possible. So that doesn't mean that they will not find happiness on that. But there are people who put happiness on owning a lot of things. So these are people who put importance on significant events, like for example, celebrating their birthdays on a very prestigious places, okay, or celebrating their events, their birthdays in a party position, not luxurious enough or anything. These are people who put much investments on that. And also there's people who collect accomplishments like awards, like U.S. honors, and many more are also part of this. I'm not saying that this is bad, okay? I'm just saying that there are people like that, and they try to put so much. They are trying to find happiness on material stuff. But I'm not saying that they will not find it. But again, we have different perspectives and perceptions. So they find happiness on that aspect, and someone will find happiness on other aspects as well. Okay, and I hope, of course, that everyone will find their happiness on those specific aspects. Alright, so the possessions that we generally have tell us something about who we are, our self-concept, our past, and even our future. So in here, the things that we have tells other people what we've been through, what we think of ourselves, and what we think of our future. So let me give you an example. Just like me, okay? So I have plenty of gadgets. Okay, so whenever I started to go to school, I have to make sure that I have a new laptop. Okay, because when I was a child, okay, so I grew up in a public school, high school. So, and also when I entered college, when I started my first year in Trinity University of Asia, I did not own anything. I own a cell phone. That's a very old cell phone. So that's, I think, Nokia back then. And then that's the only thing that I have. So our family doesn't own any computers. years. So imagine finishing college without having any don't have any internet or computer at home. Okay, so I have to go to the computer shop just to study, research on things, and then also I have to go back and forth to the school library just to search on something. So I've struggled and I've already experienced having nothing when I was still in college. And now when I entered in graduate school in UST, I've decided to buy a laptop. So, and not only that, I have also bought a laptop when I was still studying for my board exam, for my psychometrician board exam. So as you can imagine, I've already have 2 laptops, though both laptops are now very slow because it's already old. So I bought laptops every time I pursue studying because I've already experienced having nothing when I was still in college. Okay, and I made sure, for example, when I started to work, I made sure that I invest or I save much money just to buy the laptop that I want. So that's it. So in here, owning a laptop, in my example, owning a laptop says a lot about myself. So in my past, I've owned a laptop because my past tells me that I don't want to experience the same thing that I've experienced when I was in college. My concept about myself about that is that I made sure that whenever I started something, I have to be ready. If that in terms of in gadgets, like owning a laptop. And my future will tell me that since you already have a laptop, you're now going to be comfortable in studying. So just like that. So my possessions tells me about who I am. Okay, so that tells me about my past, my present, and also my future.